It's always the way when you make videos. You make a video because you think about something you've seen, you respond to it, you react to it, and then you read all the comments. And people do read all the comments, you know, and loads of people put in some really good points, and you always think, oh, I wish I could make that video again. Now I've had loads of really good input. I really do appreciate your comments, even though they make me realise I missed out loads of really important, interesting, entertaining and useful stuff. Nonetheless, regardless, I found this. If you're not subscribed, by the way, do us a favour. YouTube don't help me. I'm trying to grow my channel. It's kind of stagnated for 5 years because, you know, said things you're not allowed to.
While we're on the subject, here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head.
But this looks interesting. I haven't read it. Again, we're sharing it together.
Intermission.
Hello there. Yeah, I am actually here. I forgot to mention, I already made a video about lads mags. I'll show you a bit now. But if you haven't seen that one, it's probably worth watching that one before this. Or maybe the other way around. I'll leave a link in the description. Right, let's get back to the action. To be honest with you, it was just an excuse to show loads of pictures of really hot totty. And I'll tell you why. Because step back from the culture industry. Remove yourself from the machine for a moment. We are now at a time where it is considered misogynist and sexist for a man to enjoy looking at a woman and be sexually attracted to her. That's considered misogynist. And it's absurd. You know, I get it that, you know, they spend hours on their makeup and their hair and their clothing and it's photoshopped afterwards, and it's even AI now, and there's lighting and there's nice photo shoots and all that sort of stuff, and you feel like you can't compete with those women. You don't have to. That's not the point. No man expects you to compete with them. That's like you expecting me to compete with Sean Connery as James Bond or Jason Bourne or something, you know. Ronaldo, like a multi-millionaire professional footballer. You know, I haven't got those chops, and a lot of women like that sort of stuff. It's just life that we live in hierarchical situations. We have our own strengths and our own weaknesses, and we do our best with the hand we're dealt. And, you know, we don't judge our insides by other people's outsides. We don't judge our sense of self-esteem and self-worth with how someone else appears. Now that's out of the way, let's have a look at this. How I became a lads mag feminist. Good Lord. It's a glitch in the matrix. Lulu Le-Vay used to physically balk at the sight of a young bloke flicking through... Young bloke, of course, by the way. Bloke is code for working class. It's interesting that it's young as well. What, it's alright for old men to do it? I wonder why they put young in there. They don't really, you know, these words are chosen. They're not accident. They're not arbitrary. A young bloke. So that is, used to physically balk at the sight of a working class boy. You know, dig in while they're young, you know. Get them while they're young and you can screw them up for life. You emasculate them. Lulu Le-Vay used to physically balk at the sight of a young bloke flicking through the bosom-heavy pages of a lads mag. But once she started working for one... once there was a few quid in it, she dropped all her morals, chucked them out the window. Where's the money? But once she started working for one, she became a lot less sure that these publications were as degrading and harmful as she had out. Now, I'm guessing that because this is, 10 years old, there has been a little bit of abstraction, and we've lost a sentence. I'm not going to bother trying to fill it in. Basically, once she got a job working for Lads Mags, she changed her mind. Gender equality pressure group UK Feminista, which we talked about them in the other video. Are the key activists of the Lose the Lads Mags campaign, the impact of which has resulted in a number of these publications being modesty masked, that means they've been covered up, in high street supermarkets. Some, however, have stood their ground. Nuts, Front and Zoo have been removed from the shelves of the co-op stores entirely, preferring to lose their spot than comply to media censorship. According to UK Feminista, Lads Mags promote sexist attitudes and behaviours. They normalise the idea that it is acceptable to treat women like sex objects. These are degrading and harmful publications. It is acceptable to treat women like sex objects. I said it in the other video. It is acceptable to treat men like sex objects under certain conditions. One, when you're having sex. I mean, if you're not breeding, what are you doing? You're not breeding, are you? Hello, love. Should we make a baby? No. You're having sex. And to have sex, you need a sex object. That's it. Let's not pretend we're making love. Maybe for the first couple of weeks of your relationships, but 6, 7 years in, 6, 7 months in, 6 or 7 fucks in, you're just fucking, and they're degrading and harmful. What, by giving women who have been, they lucked out on the genetic lottery and look really hot, so they get a very well-paying job, and how does that degrade them again? How does them getting free into all the best clubs and bars and restaurants and touring the world on photo shoots? How? I can't see it. I honestly can't. It's just a nonsense. A year ago, I would have agreed with this statement wholeheartedly. I physically balked at the sight. Balked of a young bloke, again, a working class kid, flicking through the bosom heavy pages. What's the problem with big boobs? Again, men love women. They absolutely love them. They admire them, they respect them. The history of the world is, you could argue, a history of men going to fight and die to protect women. And I'm not joking. It's not even hyperbole. Bosom heavy. I just wanted to say that again. Gives me a little butterflies in the stomach. Bosom heavy. Bosom heavy. Feel free to put bosom heavy in the comments if you want to enjoy writing it. Bosom heavy pages of one particular Lads Mag on a bus or a plane. This was a magazine I detested from my core. I made a snap judgment and assumption about both the reader and the publication. I instantly placed that person and the magazine, more like, placed that person and the magazine within a certain category, a category beneath the one I believed I was smugly sitting in. Now that's a really interesting point. Now we know this is a story about a U-turn because, going back to the title, How I Became a Lads Mag Feminist, we know it's a U-turn, but belief is absolutely on the money, because feminism is a belief system. It isn't a series of arguments. It isn't a series of ideas and concepts. It's a belief. It's just, you know, when people say, you've all I would put everything I own, which ain't a lot, so, you know, it's not a very weighty proposition, this. But I'd put everything I own that everyone reading this has had someone say to them once in their life, "What, you're not a feminist?" And you're like, "No." And they're like, "Wow, why not? What don't you like women?" Eh? I mean, you know, at my advanced vintage, I don't think I've ever come across something that has carried so much power and done so much damage to society with so little intellectual rigour to back it up as feminism. You know, it's much like BLM. Calling it feminism is it's a genius stroke of marketing. You a feminist? No. What, you don't like women? You support Black Lives Matter? No. What, you don't like black people? It's the same logic. And, you know, I need a bit more than that. You know, a belief system, you know, that's like a religion, that's faith. That's where you don't have the necessary chops to put together an argument and have a debate. You don't have the necessary understanding of how things work to be able to, you know, outline a series of conditions that you can show make something negative, make something degrading, make something damaging in the way feminists talk about. That's what a belief is. And she says it again, look, straight away, I've just seen it there. My belief in being perched high up on the snobby social mobility ladder protruded with as much pride as the cover star's monumental assets. But what were these judgments based on precisely? My perspective on lads' mags has now completely changed since I started working on one of them. I've always been interested in girls. That's actually what it says, I'm not just telling you that. I've always been interested in girls and women's issues since I was a teenager. Well, of course you was, because you live in a culture that promotes feminism at an early age, so as to get the brain rot in early. Being a 1970s child, born last into a family dominated by older brothers, 11 kids in total, spawned from 2 mothers, good gosh, I had no option. I had first-hand experience of growing up within the dominant patriarchal society. At 10 years old, I was demonstrating at Greenham Common. Oh, good Lord. If you don't know, Greenham Common was a big, proper, left-wing, lesbos kind of CND. I mean, if you're young, you might not know, but CND was the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. And they would have regular marches through London. People actually believed they were going to be able to protest the clock of military progress backwards, and everyone was going to get rid of their nuclear weapons. Although this isn't meant to be a history lesson, I think it's fair to say that the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp was actually there to protest the storing of cruise missiles at the Greenham Common RAF base in Berkshire. And at one point, I think they had about 80,000 stinking hippies there. and they actually held hands. But I think it was like some kind of like 15-mile perimeter around it. I mean, it achieved fuck all, but you know, they still celebrate it. There's monuments, there's monoliths put up. Yep. I bet it stunk up there. When I was a kid and I used to watch them on the news, you know, there was more trouble today at Greenham Common, and I'd look at them all, you know, all in their army surplus and their short haircuts and beards. And I used to think, oh, that looks like it stinks. Anyway, at 10 years old, I was demonstrating at Greenham Common Smelly Show with my mother, an ardent first waver. Her passion for women's rights, well, hang on, don't they just fall under human rights, was a big influence. My first degree back in the 1990s in art history explored issues of the representation of women in arts and the media. And when I embarked on a master's in gender, media and culture last year, my interest and knowledge peaked. I became immersed in feminist theory and got to grips with semiotics, which has enabled me to pick apart media messages with a number of underpinning theories. Oh dear. I've now embarked on a PhD in sociology focusing on the feminised social body and media effects in relation to trends in assisted conception. I can now, and do, call myself a feminist. I've am earning the academic stripes. So with this in mind, it seems remarkable, if not unfathomable, to me that I've made such a U-turn. Show me the money. You know, it's weird, isn't it? If you go against your ethics, if you go against your morality for money, you know, you wouldn't be. I wouldn't be surprised if someone called you a whore, which is ironic, really. That I've made such a U-turn on my venomous standpoint against this one specific publication that was making my feminist blood boil. And look, I know it's only a small point, but it's incredible that she separated her blood to a feminist blood. You know, it didn't make her blood boil, it made her feminist blood boil. It's a belief system. Much to my own surprise, I was offered and accepted freelance work on this magazine as a sub-editor, the person who proofreads a copy, conjures up hilarious picture captions, well, I try, and creates snappy headlines. Over the last few months, I've been brought down a peg or two. Why? Because they're paying me. Oh no. Why? Because through the nature of this work, I have had to delve deep into the magazine content and read it, rather than, that's more than any blokes who, I don't think I've ever read any article in any lads mag. It's a book of pictures for me. Oh, amazing that she bothered with the copy. And read it, rather than let me know in the comments if you've read articles in lads mags. Now I'm not talking about like GQ or anything like that. I'm talking about the same as what she's talking about. Zoo, Nuts, Front, you know. And when I say article, I mean an article about something that isn't about how Joe and Candy spend their evenings trying on each other's lingerie. That doesn't count. And read it, rather than simmering with sanctimony from afar. To my surprise, the copy is clean. There are no swear words. Oh, thank fuck for that. I mean, utopian idealism it's such a weak idea of civilization. You know, these are for adults. These are, you know, even like 16, 17-year-olds who've been swearing since they were 5 years old. There are no swear words. Oh, great. Are there any long words? And no derogatory language is directed towards the featured women. The tone is light, fun and friendly. Ah, thank you. Yeah, it is. Because men adore women. You have got some men who don't. But it's such a limited number. If it wasn't limited number, if it was anything like the sort of numbers feminists talk about, You know, it would be war on the streets because half of the people out there are men and half of them are women. And, you know, like Sadiq Khan's ridiculous, already disappeared, self-ponaged mate campaign.
Mate, that's all it needs. I think you should weaponise that. I think you should weaponise that. I think you should weaponise that. Mate.
You know, if you see one of your mates treating a woman really badly, you don't need the mayor and Ramesh Ranganathan to tell you you've got to go, mate. No, you give them a kick in the arse. And you do it. But guess what? I haven't seen it. I've never seen any of my mates treating a woman badly in public. And when you see other blokes doing it, they operate alone, blokes like that. Do you know why? Because people don't like them. Because they're arseholes. They haven't got any mates. A lot of nonsense that was, but, you know, I'm sure public money was redistributed into private pockets somehow. Even working in the office, I found myself surrounded by a pleasant team of educated, happily married blokes who are simply doing their job and doing it well. The sprinkling of girls working in editorial and advertising are also perfectly content. Interestingly, there are more girls doing work experience than boys, mostly coming from a media undergraduate background. I mean, what did she expect? You know, did she expect to sort of go into this big hall with like loads of men in like flasher raincoats, sort of with one hand in their pocket going, yeah, go and put those pictures in that magazine, you dirty bitch. You know, what did she expect? Their professional publications. I was surprised. I think they were perfectly nice people who made these successful publications. Really, that's very surprising. During my time on the inside thus far, there has been much discussion about the feminist campaign against them and how they treat women like sex objects. And as you know, they do. Yeah, they do. There's nothing wrong with that. So do the women who are doing the work. That's their job. And they know that. It's not all they are. It's not all they do. The arguments that have arisen are openly debated amongst colleagues, which has been impossible to ignore. Why should the covers of lads' mags be singled out and not the torso glistening covers of gay magazines? Actually a very good point. Why is it acceptable to have a zero-size model with her nipples out in a fashion title? There you go, your Vogues, your Cosmopolitans, all that lot, all those style mags. And not acceptable to have a size 12 or 14 curvy woman doing precisely the same thing in a lads mag. Well, the difference is they're trying to attack working class men. And that is something they consume. They're the consumers of that product. So attack that product and make and degrade those men. What a peculiar turnaround. Make them think their natural urge when responding to a sexually exciting image, make them feel guilty about that. Make them feel bad. Make them feel like they're doing something wrong. When actually it's one of the most natural things about being a man. So yeah, what could possibly go right? These women would be considered too fat for the emancipated requirements of fashion magazines. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to get Lucy Pinder in a fashion magazine. No, she's too big. And yet she's so beautiful. Lucy, I'm not joking, Lucy. On the off chance that you're watching this, I love you. I love you. I love your bosom heavy pages. So, this provokes some questions. Do different rules apply within different class categories? The answer is yes. Spoiler alert, yes it does. Does an image of a naked woman hanging in an art gallery mean less objectification because of the more esoteric space and because the audience is of a different socio-cultural background. No, she's still being sexually objectified, but it just still doesn't matter. That would be my point. But in the context of what she's saying, she's absolutely right. That doesn't count because there's no value to be gained from calling it out. You know, you cannot further emasculate an already undernourished and undereducated class of men by pulling down Rembrandt's. You know, a man famous for doing self-portraits, but, you know, quite feminine looking. These arguments are complex and there are no clear answers, but they are here and should be openly considered. Alright, it's only this little bit here now. Now, more informed, I've become far more broad-minded. However, I still have concerns with the representation of young women. Why is this young keep popping up? I mean, what is young and what is old? I mean, would it be right if they were old women? Would, you know, what, like 70-year-old women in bikinis on the cover of magazines? In these types of publications. My issue now is not so much about the actual magazines featuring them, but more so with the girls' desires to be featured. These magazines are inundated by young girls, models and regular girls, despite desperately wanting to make a nudie splash across the pages. They want to do it, desperately wanting to be photographed and put in a magazine, desperately wanting to be a sex object. You know why? Because it's sexy as fuck, really sexy. And try and put yourself in men. Most of my audience is men, so I do tend to, you know, talk. And I'm a man, by the way. Talk from a man's point of view. But women watching this, let me know in the comments. If you were given the opportunity when you were like 22, right? A photographer said, "Oh, you're beautiful. We'd love to do a shoot with you. It's, you know, it's no nudity. It's swimsuits, that sort of stuff." Imagine, you'd love it, wouldn't you? You'd have a lovely series of photos taken by top designers and photographers and lighting people, and men all over the country will be loving you. Why wouldn't a woman want to do that? It doesn't make any sense. No, I don't want to do that. I think, what? You think I'm sexy? How horrible is that? It's just nonsense. Clambering for affirmation of their value. No, they just want to be sexy because it's sexy being sexy, and sexy is sexy. And as much as that sounds like a ridiculous sentence, it's actually one of the most honest and truthful things I've ever said. Clambering for affirmation of their value for some kind of societal approval. Is it here the cycle needs to be broken, or is it not their own choice? Okay. Maybe we should let people choose what they want to do. Incredible, actually asking that. Is it maybe we should leave it up to them? I don't know. No, let's look after them. Let's tell them what to do. Emancipation through objectification? No. Sexy through sexual objectification. Are we as a society simply being too uptight? No, that would be letting you off the hook. You know, this isn't simply being uptight. This is intentionally being malicious to further damage masculinity and men. I'm not accepting that at all. Oh, we're prudish, we're prudish. No, this is leftist ideology. It's part of an ideological state apparatus, an ideological cultural apparatus, to further demonise masculinity. I am now wrestling emotionally and intellectually with these two worlds. Well, you're not, because financially you're still there. You're still working there. And, you know, I'm going to guess if you're getting paid to do a job, that emotional and intellectual wrestling, maybe you're playing scissors, paper, stone with yourself, but wrestling, that's a bit generous. You're being paid for it and you're doing it. One moment in my personal study, I'm exploring ideas around women's bodies being both subjects and objects of images, and how young women's bodies become, through relationships with images under dominant patriarchal codes, which could be related directly to the content I'm working on at this particular lads mag. Do you know, just reading that took me back. You know, how old was I? That's nearly 30 years to my Masters in Cultural Studies. All that kind of talk, all that sort of, women's bodies become through relationships. No, we all become through living. How does a woman's body become through, how does it do it any more than a man's? And how does a body, a body just grows and essentially decays at a certain point. It's the mind. Although I've made the classic mistake of European metaphysics by dividing the two, but that will be a subject for another video. Body and mind, that is, of course, or psychosoma, I like to say when I'm chatting up a young woman who's desperately wanting to make a nudie splash across my bed. The next moment I am confirming my next subbing shift and discussing with the production editor what cake I should bring in so he can let me leave early to meet my supervisor. Good Lord, she's actually admitting to bribing her boss with cakes and no doubt a flutter of the eyelashes and a low-cut bra, you slag. The feminist within me is now not fully sure if these magazines are degrading and harmful after all. But what I am decided upon is that one genre of publication should not be targeted, and that this objectification... Oh, sorry, I should actually read this because this is the denouement. The feminist within me is now not fully sure if these magazines are degrading and harmful after all. But what I am decided upon is that one genre of publication should not be targeted, and that this objectification finger pointing is a class issue as much as a feminist issue. No. If society disapproves of objectification of the subject, then cover them all up. Only then would that be true equality. Wow, what a way to end it. And there you go. Sorry, I didn't have it on the screen. I'll edit that back in. But there you go, look. Cover it all up. No more representation. What? Ban representation. No more representation. Okay, where do we start? Give us a thumbs up. It's really important. Even if you didn't like it, help us out. Fucking starving here. Ta-da!
Sweet, sweet, mama, sweet, sweet, mama, sweet, sweet.